Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 51 of my 2020 reads. This is just one more week to go before the end of the year, and yeah, it's been a good reading week. I read a couple of new releases, and I also read a classic SFF book. The first book I finished this week was The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is a story that my husband Sush had read earlier and liked it and decided to read out loud to me. He had previously read to me The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, which was her first exploration of writing a horror novel, and this is her second. The storyline of The Hollow Places is that there is a woman who goes to live with her uncle who has something called the Wonder Museum, which is a museum sort of dedicated to all kinds of supernatural things, Bigfoot, UFO, etc., lots of taxidermied animals, all kinds of things. And she finds that there is a hole in one of the walls in the museum that leads to another dimension, something called the Hollow Places, which is just a very strange place filled with willow trees. And the atmosphere in this is definitely great. I loved the world building, this idea of this other place, so different from our own, trying to figure out what's going on. I loved that kind of unfolding of the mystery of the world and that creepy atmosphere as we went through. The humor was great, but I found that just like with The Twisted Ones, this novel also shared some aspects that just weren't for me. So one of the ways that this novel unfolds is with our main characters sort of deciding to go into this world and constantly making what I consider very poor decisions and taking risks that I think are just not good. Sush was telling me that in horror novels, this is often a way to kind of ramp up the anxiety where the reader knows that the character should not do the thing, but the character makes that decision anyway. And this is not for me, apparently, because rather than feeling anxiety as the characters made these decisions, I just got more and more frustrated with them. And I thought that they were very bad at living their lives and making decisions because clearly they should have, not gone into the door, not done these things. And it was just so frustrating for me to watch them over and over make poor decisions. Especially because, and I think maybe T. Kingfisher knows that her characters are making bad decisions because they would even have like discussions about, if we do this, these might be the consequences or these might be the dangers. But then they decide, but we have no choice but to do this because of X, Y, and Z reason, except that I think X, Y, and Z reason were not sufficient reasons at all. And so it was just very frustrating for me. I think that this is well written. I think that it is an improvement on her previous story in terms of creepiness factor. This one definitely had a creepy vibe, and I really did like the world building and all that, but I just am not a fan of that kind of poor decision making of the characters in order to get them into very bad situations. So overall, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, but if you like that kind of horror novel, I think that this is a good one. It's just clearly not quite my style. Next, I finished Lupe Wong Won't Dance by Donna, Barba, Higuera. This is a book that I heard about from Adri at Perpetual Pages, who I will link below, and I'm so glad that I did because it was so good. The story is that we follow Lupe, who is of Chinese and Mexican descent, and she is super into sports. She plays baseball, she wants to go pro, but she also needs to make A's in all of her classes to meet her idol, who is also a baseball player. Except that her PE class decides that they're gonna do a unit on square dancing, and she is not having it. She does not want to do square dancing, and she also is worried that she won't get an A. So this story is all about her trying to get rid of the square dancing unit, and also the other things that happen along with this. So this story is so great. I really like having very difficult, stubborn, angry little girls as the protagonists in stories, and you definitely have that here with Lupe. I think that the story arc is great not just because of the way that it addresses a lot of issues related to the history of square dancing and the way that different communities, different heritage are represented or not represented in schools, but also because there's so much in here about emotional growth for Lupe. There's so much that she's sort of needing to learn about herself and about her relationships with other people, about what to fight over and what to sort of overcome in different ways. It is super beautiful. I definitely found that there was a little bit in the middle where it got a little too melodramatic in terms of conflict with friends, but I really liked the way that that was part of Lupe's growth arc. So overall, it was still really, really solid. It does have quite a bit of slightly puerile humor, but even so, there was so many things that I was laughing out loud with. I really definitely enjoyed this story. I think it's got a ton of heart. It says a lot of really interesting things, and I just loved the characters. So I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend it. Also, one of the things that made me really interested in this is that it is published by Levine, Querido, which I will link below to the publisher. And they are also the people who published Elatsoe by Darcie Little Badger, which I loved. I have an entire review of that, so I'll link it below as well. And I went and requested all of their published works from my library, so you may see a lot of their works coming up in the near future. And lastly, I finished the Tombs of Atuan, which is the second book in the Earthsea cycle by Ursula K. Le Guin. So this is a story that sort of continues, in a sense, off of the first book in the series, except we follow a completely different character who ends up eventually meeting the Wizard of Earthsea, the one from the first book. So the character that we follow is a priestess who, from childhood, is raised in this temple to become the head priestess. And she is the priestess of the Nameless Ones, and they are sort of this dark power of death. So this is really atmospheric. I loved the way that everything was described about the temple. It's in the desert. It's just so beautiful in terms of that atmosphere and in terms of the way that the temple works and the way that the priestesses are. So much of this I really, really loved, especially in the beginning. As we go forward though, this priestess, this head priestess, meets the wizard from the first book, and there's some dynamics there that are not so much my style. This is something that was written in the late 60s, and I think that definitely there are some tropes that I have noticed about anything that is dealing with like a woman and a man and slightly kind of romantic or flirty or anything like that, that just not so much my taste. Definitely older romances kind of play into some of these tropes, and even some of the older fantasy that I've read plays into some of these tropes, and it's just not so much my style. But I did think that the writing was great. I loved the magic. I loved also some of the exploration of themes of light and dark, themes of freedom and responsibility. So there was a lot of good stuff in this, even if I wasn't 100% behind some of the gender roles, some of the ways that the characters interacted because of those gender roles. So overall, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I'll definitely continue on to the next books in the series. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read this week. I am super excited about all of the remaining reading that I'm going to try to get done by the end of the year. I've got a huge stack of books that I really, really want to read, so we'll see what I end up getting to. If you guys have read any of the books that I've mentioned, or if you have any thoughts, any comments, if you want to tell me what you're trying to get read by the end of the year, anything at all, go ahead and leave me a comment down below.